guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we are talking about our 6-month 20 country fast travel challenge. And you know, when we started this whole journey 7 years ago, we weren't really sure what we wanted to do, where we wanted to settle, what we wanted our travel life to look like. And right now, you probably know us for our slow travels, taking 1 month or more in each location that we go to. But when we first started this, we were moving at a pretty fast pace, and for a 6-month period we kind of set a goal to try to visit 20 countries, and we never really made a video about it. And so we wanted to share that with you guys. As we were looking back at some of the pictures from when we started, they came up recently, we were like, let's share this. And just because there was so much that we learned in this 6-month challenge, that we just wanted to kind of break it down for you guys and share it with you.
Yeah, this was a great time. We definitely don't do it this fast anymore, but we hit so many places that we loved, and maybe there's something you can take from this, places you want to go, or lessons learned from how we did it. But we're just going to recount it kind of country by country and let you know what happened. So we started off, of all places, I don't know why, but we flew to Romania. I'm pretty sure it's because we saw a Rick Steves Romania show, and we wanted to go. And I remember sitting on the couch at our home in Georgia, and Alexa was there. She had not yet left for college, and we were like, when we start this, we're going to Romania. And she could not figure out why we wanted to go to Romania. And it was because of that TV show. So, you know, something as simple as that can spark it. But we flew to Romania first, and it was amazing. We loved Romania.
It really was amazing. And the funny part was that Romania was kind of a baptism by fire situation, because we arrived into the airport in Bucharest at I want to say it was like around 1:30 a.m. So by the time we got a taxi from the airport into the old city, it was about 2 o'clock in the morning, and we were checking into an Airbnb. And so we got there, we thought we had all the information we needed. They told us how to get into the place. We're schlepping our bags through the old town on cobblestone roads, is making all kinds of noise. We pull up there and we walk up to what we think is the building where our Airbnb is. And there's supposed to be a night guard on duty, and no answer. We try to reach out to the Airbnb host. Thankfully, they told us we were at the wrong building. We had to turn around and go to the building behind us. We did that, and then we still had to wake up the night guard. And he let us in, and we were able to get into our unit. So it was a rough start, but it was such a great stay, and it was such a surprising place. The food was so incredible there, and it was just such a cool place to be, and so much to explore. And I really did appreciate and love that episode of Rick Steves when he was in Bucharest, because it was all that he said and more.
Yeah, it was. And we did find that the Romanians were very receptive to us as Americans. In fact, one of the day guards that we got to know, I was wearing a New York Rangers t-shirt walking around the building, and he stopped us and he was like, "Oh, you guys are from New York," which she was born in New York. So it was true that one of us was from New York. He just wanted to take a picture with us and have conversations. He actually brought his wife over to work one day to sit with him all day just to meet us because we were from New York. And it was crazy, the reception that we got there. But just a great city. So many things to see. You'll learn a lot when you go to Romania about their history, and some of the things that the people there told us was that, you know, they just loved America, and a lot of the older people who lived through the rough times in Romania said that they always saw America as a beacon of hope, and that as long as America existed, that there was hope for them to be like America one day. And so they really kind of took that to heart, and it really did show, because wherever we went, we were welcomed with open arms, and just an amazing country. Food is out of this world. Like, being from the Midwest, they eat a lot of meat and potatoes there, and I was like, this food is amazing.
It was Rob heaven.
Some of the best food in the world, I think, is in Romania. So, yeah, we stayed there for a month, and that was kind of like we just needed to get our bearings. And then after that, we flew to, crazy enough, we were just kind of doing things by the seat of our pants, and our daughter was still in college, Alexa, and so we let her pick the next destination because it was summer break, and she was going to have to visit us because school was out, and we'd already sold our house. And so it was like, well, I guess we'll let her decide. She picked Athens, Greece. I don't know why, but she picked Athens, Greece. So we flew to Athens next.
Yeah, Athens was really incredible. You know, it's funny because a lot of people go to Athens for just like a couple days on their way to the islands. So it's not really a place where a lot of people are like, oh, I'm going to stay there for a month. Well, we did, because we thought, you know, this is going to be a great place. There's, you know, so many different things to see. The history there is phenomenal, obviously. Really rich history. There's just so much to experience. And I honestly, Greece absolutely ruined me for Greek food. It's really hard to have Greek food after you've been to Greece because it is literally will just blow my mind, just blow your mind. I mean, I remember taking the first bite of food there at a restaurant, and it was just like, oh, this is real Greek food. You mean this is like real. It was so good. It was phenomenal, and the people were really welcoming and so kind. And like I said, we didn't get bored, not once.
No, we stayed in an Airbnb there, and it was kind of wild because it wasn't really that expensive. I think it was $1,400 for the month, and it had a view of the Acropolis from the rooftop deck. And so we would go up there every night and watch the sunset, and it was just like, really? Is this really what we're looking at night? And it was wild. Walked over to the first Olympic Stadium, which was right around the corner from our Airbnb, and you could go in there and run around the track and climb the stairs, and we did all that kind of stuff and just had an amazing time. Our daughter did visit us. We took her to see, one of her friends came too. We took them around to see the sights, took some side trips, and it was great. So Greece was next. Then from there, we really were doing a lot of flights, which I think that really caught up to us by the end of this. But from there, we flew to Italy because you had always wanted to go to Lucca, and I'm not sure why we flew in this kind of convoluted order, but we flew from Greece to Italy and went to Lucca, and it was amazing because, again, we had a great Airbnb that kind of just overlooked the piazza, and this is where I took the famous picture of the couple that was having their wedding, and they were doing their wedding pictures, and one day it was raining, and they were out there. We were watching because we had overlooking this piazza from our apartment, and they were just out there, and it was pouring down rain, and their photographer was like in a tunnel somewhere. I could see the photographer, and they were like, you know what, we're not getting good pictures, but we're just going to walk out there. And they were the only people there because it was raining. It was even thundering and lightning, and they just kind of looked up at the sky like this, and all of a sudden at one moment there was a lightning flash, and they were looking up, and I took their picture from a perched position from our apartment. And it was an amazing picture, but I never found them. So,
no, we did try to share it on some places in social media to see if we can find them to give them the picture, but we never did found them.
Yeah, maybe
never did find them.
Maybe they'll see this video.
Maybe they will. Maybe they'll see it. We'll insert the picture here if we can track it down.
Yeah, so that was amazing. But Lucca, we just loved the food. We would go to the grocery stores, local stores, get food, bring it up, and you would make a meat and cheese board almost every night.
Yeah, and the butcher at the little grocery store that we would go to was so funny. He would see us and then start singing in Italian, and he would get so happy, and he was, oh, for you should get this. And then he would just slice it up and give it. We're like, I don't even know what he's slicing up back there, but we would end up with a bunch of meat and cheese somehow, and we would just take it back, get some bread and some crackers and fruit, and we were happy as pie just sitting and people watching, the piazza down below. It was one of those things, I wanted to go there because I wanted like a real Italian experience, and it was really nice to like live in the old city walls. And it was just kind of like a rustic more feeling than being in like a, swanky hotel.
Yeah, no, this was a much quicker stay. We were not there a month.
No.
It's only like a week, maybe less. But then from there we moved on and we flew. Again, why were we flying? I don't know why. When you first start out, you feel like you got to fly to a new country every 3 days. It's not the case. But from there we flew to England and stayed in London and kind of checked off something we'd always wanted to do. We stayed, I think it was the Tower of London Hotel. It was right there by it. And we got a room that had a view of the bridge.
Yeah, the Tower Bridge Hotel
Tower Bridge, yeah.
was insane. A lot of times pictures you'll see of the Tower Bridge are from the hotel. And we had just come off, when we got there, it was the day after our anniversary. I forget which one, 20 something. We're at 29 now, but we had just, it must have been like 23 or something. We had just come off of our anniversary and we got there and we were chatting with the girl who was checking us in and happened to mention it was our, we had just, celebrated our anniversary. Well, the next thing you know, she says, "Oh, I found a really good room for you," as she was checking us in. We didn't know anything because you have to pay extra to have a view of the Tower Bridge. And at that point, we were not investing that much in a hotel room, so we didn't pay for the view of the bridge. But we checked into our room, and like a couple seconds after being in there, I hear Rob gasping at the window. He's like, "Oh, she gave us a room with a view of the bridge." It was so exciting. And then later, we went out, walked around, and enjoyed a little bit of the area that the hotel was in, and they had sent a bottle of wine up and a little note saying happy anniversary to us. It was the sweetest thing.
Yeah, now that one, we did get that tip from my mom because they had been on an oats trip, I think it was, to England, and that's where they stayed. And
That's
so
right.
We figured,
Yeah.
if that's where they took them on their trip, that's a pretty good
gotta
trip.
be good.
It's got to be good. So we're doing like our own DIY trip like that. So we thought, well, we'll just go to this hotel. And so that's how we used to get our recommendations from good places other people had went.
Yes.
And then from there, we did our first logical thing, which was to go to Scotland from England. Now, this was one of the craziest things because it was our first train in Europe, and we were like, well, we'll just go from London to Scotland. That's not that bad, and then we'll rent a car. And we showed up to the train station, and we had all our bags, because this was our first time leaving the U.S., like, on all this huge trip.
With all of our stuff.
We had so many more bags than we have now. We had a huge bag, and we each had another big suitcase, and then several other backpacks. So we had 3 big suitcases. It was so much stuff, way more than you need. And so we pull up to the train station, and we talk to the guy working there, and we're like, "Hey, we're going to Scotland. What platform do we need to go to?" And he looks at us, and he's like, "Oh, no, you're not going to..." You could see in his face, he was like, "You are not going to make it.
These two aren't making it."
He's like, "This is going to be terrible." And so in that moment, he had pity on us, and he said, well, it's not on the board yet. And this was a super crowded train. We didn't know that. We just had a train ticket, but it was like not a reserved seat. It was whoever gets there first is going to get a seat. Whoever doesn't,
Every man for himself.
is going to be standing in the aisle for 5 hours with their bags. And he could see from the amount of bags we had, this was going to be a disaster. So he said, "If I were you, I would go stand at platform 8 right now and get on that train as soon as it comes in." And so we're like, "Okay, well, we'll do that." And so we still didn't know what was happening. Train came in, we got on. We were the only ones on because no one else knew. They hadn't put it on the board yet. And we thought, "Oh, this is quite luxurious." And then as soon as they put that number on the board, it was like a scene from a movie. Hundreds
like
of people
a horror movie or something.
sprinting down the concourse to get to this train. Hundreds and hundreds of people. And sure enough, within a few minutes, the entire train, every seat was full, and the aisleway was packed with people. You couldn't move. You couldn't have gotten up and made it to a bathroom if you wanted to on this train. And we just sat there and thought, man, this guy saved us.
He absolutely saved us. If you've been there now with the knowledge, now we know, obviously, you don't know what the platform is until the final second. And that's why you see people, if you've seen footage before of people standing and staring up at the board, like just staring, like they're looking for something amazing to happen. They're just waiting for that platform. And as soon as that platform number shows up, everybody takes off. And so that was what was going to happen to us. And this guy absolutely did us the biggest favor probably ever by telling us, because we had way too many bags at that point.
Yeah, and then so we did get up there. We rented a car, and Allie started her Scotland driving experience, which was not for the faint of heart.
Not for people who are scared of heights.
And also just the driving was just very unfamiliar to us.
Driving on the opposite side, even though we did have an automatic car, but driving on the other side of what I'm used to was very complicated.
So we went to the Isle of Skye, which was a great choice. It was insanely beautiful. Now, we only decided to do this about 2 weeks before we went. We were making some decisions on the fly, which wasn't a good idea. We found out later for Scotland, because Scotland is very expensive, and this was the summer. This was right after, this was August. And so basically the entire island was booked, and all we could find were 2 pods on Airbnb. They still weren't cheap, but they were, it was almost like camping.
It really was the closest thing you could get to camping. It just that the walls were thicker than a tent wall, but basically, yes. They were cute when you first drive up to them, but not cute when you go inside.
Yeah. But again, Isle of Skye was beautiful. We saw all the sights. We saw just the scenery. It's just amazing. So totally recommended, but definitely get your accommodations well before a couple weeks before you get there. So we spent about a week in Scotland, and then from there we flew to Ireland and kind of had this dream we were going to drive the entire island, and we did do that.
We did, and it was actually really fun. And by then, I kind of had my wits about me now, driving on the other side. Felt a little bit more normal-ish. I had kind of gotten used to it. There's still a lot of, if you've ever driven in some of these countries, there's a lot of traffic circles, and some of them are even on like interstates or like highways. And so Rob was always still having to call out like, oh, make sure you turn to the left, or, whatever, stay on this side. Just kind of needed that little, kind of verbal assistance to keep me going the right way, especially once you get into something like a traffic circle. It could be a little bit complicated. I did get honked at probably the most in Ireland of all of the places that I drove in on the other side of what I'm used to, but we made it.
Yeah, I think one of the coolest thing we did there, though, was we stayed in a castle, which was pretty fun and quite an experience. If you're gonna go there, you have to do that at least one night. It was pretty great. But then we drove all the way around the south, went to the Cliffs of Moher, got pretty decent weather for that, which was great, and then made our way north, Faned Lighthouse, and then we said, you know what, let's go to Northern Ireland. And that did not disappoint either.
It did not disappoint. It was such a highlight to get to Northern Ireland. Weren't sure what it was going to be like. Again, it's one of those places where, like, in our age range, we're 50. When we were kids, you heard some things about some places, and it was one of those places, and you just weren't sure what to expect when you got there. It was so cool. It was so beautiful. We saw so many amazing things. And I got to tell you, we stayed at the Titanic hotel, the Titanic Museum Hotel. And I thought it's just going to be like, a little cheesy experience thing. But we thought, oh, what the heck? Let's, we were only going to be staying there for a few nights. So we thought, let's splurge and go ahead and stay at it. I'm going to tell you that it was such a wonderful experience. It was done so well. It was done in the building where the offices were, where they actually drew it all up and everything, and like all the plans were taking place in this building. So they have all of that preserved still downstairs. So it's kind of like a hotel museum all in once. And then you walk out the front door and you're looking right where they built the Titanic and the actual Titanic Museum. phenomenal experience. Loved it. It was not cheesy at all.
Yeah, loved Northern Ireland. From there, we took another flight. We were trying to piece things together now. A little more logically, we went to Iceland, and I think we were trying to get there for the Northern Lights and have a good chance. So we that was one of our biggest things for that fall, was we wanted to do that. And so we gave ourselves really two chances of Iceland and Norway, and we were going to be spending about a month total in those two places. But Iceland is very expensive. If you don't know, it's quite pricey, and so we gave ourselves a week in Iceland and decided that would be, a good start. Picked a hotel and got a car, and we were just going to drive. We had gotten an app on our phone that told us what the cloud covering was, and it looked pretty good for Northern Lights. And so we just said every night we're just going to drive out and see. And the very first night where we were, it was covered in clouds, but about 4 hours away, we saw on the map, it was going to be clear. And we just drove the 4 hours and made it all the way to Glacier Lagoon before sundown, and got to play at the Diamond Beach where the ice looks like a diamond. I actually accidentally walked into the ocean.
Well, you didn't really accidentally walk into it. It's just when Rob's taking pictures as a photographer, when he's taking pictures, he's very engrossed in the forming of the picture or framing, and he loses sight of his surroundings, which is why I usually tag along as a safety feature. But I also am not willing to get my feet wet with Arctic freezing water. So I kind of stood back and I was watching him, and before I could warn him, the wave just came flying up and swept him in with the freezing cold water. I mean, there's huge chunks of glacier in this water. And it just kind of, got feet, shoes, everything wet.
Yeah.
And it wasn't going to be warming up anytime because we were going to be there all night waiting for the Northern Lights. But it paid off. It was 100% worth it because we got such gorgeous, gorgeous view of the Northern Lights, and they really showed up for us.
Yeah, and I wasn't even really cold after that happened. That's the benefit.
How was cold for you?
It's the benefit of being from Michigan, I think. Yeah, that was our first experience with the Northern Lights. It was phenomenal, and we were on like a high then, and we just had to drive back to the hotel 4 hours back after that. But I don't even remember the drive back. It was. We were cold, and
yeah.
it was late.
It was cold, and I think we were just really running off of adrenaline because it was so exciting to see, not just to see the Northern Lights, but it was like a very special solar storm that was occurring right then, and so they were really just really out, and it was really such an incredible experience that I think we were just riding off that adrenaline high. For the whole 4 hours all the way back to our hotel.
Yeah, the next night we went to a waterfall, and we decided to go to Skagfoss, and it was just the most amazing thing because we were some of the first people there. I was trying to get a good spot to take pictures, and so we got there pretty early. But as the night went on, more and more people came, and the Northern Lights were pretty good early in the evening, and I was taking pictures, and they were like, all right, well, that was pretty good. Let's go back to the car. And as we walked back to the car, we got to the car, put our stuff in, and looked up, and it was just the most incredible thing you've ever seen.
It was so surreal, and what made me look up while we were packing our stuff into the car is I heard people gasp, and I heard someone crying. And I turned around because I thought something had happened, and it was just the lights. And actually, literally, I felt like tears right then just started streaming down my cheek. It was like a whole experience. It's not really something I could fully explain, but it's just kind of a whole, full body experience almost to see the Northern Lights like that was something else.
It was the entire, sometimes you'll see the Northern Lights and you see them often. It was the entire sky, 360 degrees, as far as you could see, was just It was like you were inside a snow globe.
It's like one of those planetarium experiences, like when you went on your field trip in middle school, and you're in the planetarium. It felt like that. Probably kind of like the feeling of like in the Sphere in Las Vegas nowadays. If they did that with the Northern Lights in there, that's how it felt, but it was real.
So from Iceland, we decided to fly to the Faroe Islands, which was new to us. We hadn't really heard of it. Didn't know what to expect. I'd read a couple blogs on it, and they were kind of joking that the driving was difficult, and we didn't really take that too seriously. And we found out pretty quickly it was very difficult, insanely beautiful, very wet, but got some amazing pictures and experiences because what a wild place that is.
Wild indeed. Like it just feels like it's otherworldly. And you mentioned another part of the wildness of it is like the weather just changes so quickly. I mean, one day there were 40 mile-an-hour winds. That's like getting into tropical storm, hurricane, somebody who grew up from Florida type thing. You don't go outside in 40-mile-an-hour wind. It wasn't even a warning there. It was just a part of the weather forecast. And we were like, what? This is crazy. People just were going about their business like absolutely nothing, which was so wild. But it was such a beautiful place. There's no explaining it really. We had such an incredible time there hiking, taking pictures, and just taking in the beauty of the nature around. I mean, this place is a bunch of islands, and each island has something ridiculous to offer, or many ridiculous things to offer. Just so beautiful. So many really cool things there.
Yeah, they have what's called as the floating lake there, and you can hike to that. It's a beautiful hike, and you can look over this kind of cliff, and there's a floating lake. You can see the ocean below. It's amazing. And I'd watched this YouTube video before we got there, and there was this guy, he went there and he was like, oh, that's dangerous. I was pretty scared then. I was like, oh, this guy, he's, just being pretty dramatic here. I was like, I should look at this video. This guy's saying this is real dangerous. And we got there, and Allie was like, no, I'm not going over there. Mm-mm. And the whole reason we were there is because I wanted to take a picture of it, and I was like, well, I'm going to go over there. And the closer I got, the more my heart started to race, and I was like, this is feeling dangerous. And I got up to the edge, and I was like, this is the most dangerous place I've ever stood in my life. It was muddy. There was like one little rock you had to balance on, and then it was straight over the edge. And I took my picture very quickly, and then I carefully walked away. And I went back to her and I said, that's the most dangerous place I've ever stood. That YouTube guy was right. And then we went to another place.
A bit safer place.
Was not as dangerous. And I said, we're not going back to this place. This is a wild place.
I've never seen you take a picture so fast at a place. Normally you take like forever. This place you were like, yep, we're good. Let's go. Move down to the next part.
30 seconds, I was done. I did not want to stand there any longer. So it was great. And then the Mollefasser waterfall there, holy cow, that's one of the reasons I wanted to go. This place was insane. Got an amazing picture there. Faroe Islands, definitely recommend if you've never been there. And then from there we flew to Norway.
So Norway, wow, it's so beautiful. Again, we got to see the Northern Lights again in Norway after we had already seen them in Iceland. And the reason why that happened is because we set it up that way, because we thought so many people go to Iceland and don't get to see them that we want to set ourselves up at another possibility of a chance to get to see them, because we really wanted to see them on this trip. So we thought we'll try also, because this was during the season, the time when you would see them. And so we thought, well, we might as well set ourselves up with another chance. So we added Norway to the list so that we could do that. We went up to, we started in Tromsø and worked our way up. Actually, we started in Bergen and then worked our way up. Went from Tromsø searching, didn't see them in Tromsø, got a car and started making our way to Senja, and then to Lofton Islands, and we were able to see them, and it was absolutely incredible.
Yeah, we rented a rorbu, which is a Norwegian fishing, uh, house. These are kind of like made up to look like that. They're not real ones. They're very nice.
They're not as rustic as the real
They're
ones.
not rustic. They have saunas and hot tubs and all this kind of thing in them. So they're not rustic at all, but they look cool. So we rented one of those, and we can actually see the northern lights from our bed in the rorbu. And one day we went to the grocery store, and the cashier, we were checking out, and the cashier said to us, tonight. She said, tonight's the night. We're like, okay. And then
all right.
we don't know what's, she said Northern Lights. And we got back to the apartment, to the Airbnb, and our host called us, and she said, tonight. You got to see tonight. We're like, okay, that's two locals have told us tonight is the night. So we said, we're going to go, well, let's find a place to go. We're going to go see this. So we went over to a place called Udakliyev Beach, which was pretty close to where we were staying. And we went over early because I wanted to scout out a place to get a good picture. And I found that we walked around for like an hour. Finally walked way down the beach, and I found this place where there was like a little river of water running through the beach into the ocean. And I thought, you could see the mountains in the background. And I thought, if the northern lights, it kind of was facing north, if they hit here, they might reflect in this water, and then it'll be a cool picture. So we just set up camp there and waited. Sure enough, it happened, and we were able to get some amazing pictures there, and that was a fun night.
That was a really fun night. So from Norway, then, after we were moving around pretty quickly there for a bit, then we took a little bit longer chunk and we went to Croatia. We stayed in Dubrovnik for a month, and we had some time there to just kind of, take in everything that we had experienced, because we had experienced quite a lot so far in this trip from when we started in Romania, and now here we are in Croatia, just kind of decompressing a little bit and kind of taking all of that in from what we had been doing.
Yeah, we were pretty exhausted after the northern countries. It was a little cold. We were out most nights late at night, and we were just tired. And so we came to Dubrovnik, and a lot of people, you can do Dubrovnik in a few days or a week, even a day. But we took a month there just because we knew we needed to rest, and that was a smart thing. So Dubrovnik was great. We toured that. From there, we were also able to do 2 side trips to Montenegro and Bosnia, and that was also fun, and that's something we probably could have done had we not gone to Dubrovnik.
Yeah, it was really cool to kind of take those day trips to Montenegro. We did 2 different ones. One day we went to Kotor in Montenegro, and then another day we went to Bosnia-Herzegovina. We went to Mostar, and really got to, have an interesting experience there because our guides were also locals, and they were able to really share so much with us about, kind of the history and all that in their personal experiences too, through some, different situations there in those countries. So it was kind of cool to experience those Balkan countries. They kind of, get taken off people's lists, I think, because people don't necessarily think about them, but they're actually very interesting, and there's a lot to see there.
Yeah, and I do want to point out that one of the other reasons we were in Croatia so long was, back at the time we did this, Croatia was not a part of Schengen, and some of the places that we stayed a little bit longer, we did that because we had to get out of Schengen. In fact, that's why we were only able to stay a short time in Italy at the beginning, because we had spent so much time in a couple other places. And so that was playing into a lot of this too, was some of these countries were not Schengen, some of them were. You can only stay 90 days in a Schengen country every 6 months, so that plays into it. And so then after that, we flew back to Italy, which we knew we needed to get to because we booked the trip of a lifetime for us at the time, a cruise of a lifetime. We booked a trip on the Norwegian Jade, and it was going to be going to a ton of places that we'd always wanted to go, and just places that are kind of hard to get to on your own. And so it was expensive for us to do that, we thought at the time, but we did it, and we never looked back, and it was totally worth every cent.
It was. It was an incredible experience. And even today, when we think back, whenever I see someone mention that they're on that ship, I always have, kind of warm, fuzzy feeling for it because we just fell in love with the crew on that particular ship and just all the people, all the passengers that were cruising with us. We were on this ship for 21 nights.
Yeah.
So it was a long time that we were on there all together, and it was really cool because you kind of got to know everybody, and it wasn't like super packed full, so that was incredible. So we started out in we started out in Italy, made our way to, Greece. And then from there, we went to Cyprus, which is kind of the first stop of places we hadn't already been on this trip. Went to Cyprus, and Cyprus was such a cool place. It was so beautiful. And it actually, reminded us of some of the architecture and some of what you could see in a few of these countries like Greece. It was very beautiful, and it was a good port to stop at.
Yeah, Cyprus was great, and then we also hit a new one for us, which was Turkey. We stopped in Ephesus, which we had never been to before, and that was a really great historical site. A lot of this trip was for historical ruins and history, and that was one that we just kind of did our own thing. We didn't take a ship tour. We just hired a guy off the internet.
We did. We did some research and found a guy, and we were like, well, I don't know if this guy's going to show up. He turned out to be an incredible guide, and he got us to Ephesus, and there was a big long line because a tour bus had just gotten there. People were up front getting tickets and all this stuff. He said, oh, I got you, no problem. I got you. He said, let me have the money for the tickets. So we gave him the money, and he went up to like the locals window, and he bought us the tickets and brought them back to us. He says, okay, you can go in. I'll wait for you on the other side. Gave us directions where he would wait for us on the other side. It was so amazing. He shared so much knowledge with us. And it was just really, that was from the port of Kusadasi. When we went to Ephesus, but he gave us so much information, then took us to meet some of his friends at the bazaar, and that was really cool. And it wasn't even like to sell us something. A lot of times it's to sell you something. It wasn't. It was just kind of just to meet his actual friends, which was really cool.
Yeah, so from Turkey, next stop for the cruise ship was Israel. We actually had 2 ports in Israel. We were there for 2 days, and so we did 2 different tours. We went ahead and did them just with the ship because there was a lot of extra security going on, and it didn't seem like something we were wanting. We were so tired, and the problem with doing this is that there's so much planning that goes into this that anything we could do to take planning off of our plate, because it was like you were in a new place every day, and especially on the cruise, new place every day. We were just like, let's just do it through the ship, so we did that. So the first day we went and we went to the Dead Sea, which was amazing, and actually got to float in it, which was pretty fun.
Yeah, it was much easier than I thought it was going to be to float. I wasn't sure. I'm not the world's strongest swimmer, and so I was like, I don't know about this floating thing. Everybody talks about, oh, it's so easy. You just float right there. I was like, oh, I don't know about this. But sure enough, you can just very easily float. I just had zero trust for the salt factor in the Dead Sea, but it did work.
Yeah, you had very little faith, but it was good.
And we actually got to go up to Masada as well. That was also another harrowing experience for me. As you know, again, I don't do heights, and the only way up there was either hiking in the burning hot sun, or for hours, by the ways, or to take the little gondola ride across the huge crevice between the lower level and where the Masada actually was. But I kind of pushed myself to one side so I could take some deep breaths and took it up there, enjoyed it, and then, again, harrowing all the way back down as well. I'm sure it's perfectly safe as thousands of people do that a day, but, as someone who's scared of heights, it is what it is.
Yeah, so it was easier than the people that attacked Masada.
It was much easier. They
Yeah.
had to actually hike up.
Yeah.
And then our other excursion that we did from the ship as well in Israel was to go to the old city of Jerusalem.
Yeah, which was amazing. So much history there as well. So we saw everything there. So that was 2 pretty full days, our time in Israel. And then from there, the cruise went to Egypt, but it basically took us to some very historic places on the way while we were sailing.
Yes, well, going in the Dead Sea was incredible, but we also crossed the went through the Suez Canal in here as well, which we forgot to mention earlier in the cruise. The first part, you go through the Suez Canal, which was really quite interesting to get to that point of seeing these places. So Egypt, yeah, we went to Egypt, and that we did not go. Unfortunately, the cruise didn't go to like Alexandria or Cairo, but we did get to visit Egypt. We went to Safaga, and it was really interesting. Kind of explored there for the day, but we do probably need to go back to Egypt and explore the Alexandria and Cairo area.
Yeah, we could have gone on a tour. I think that was to the Valley of the
Kings.
Of the Kings. But it was going to be like such a long day, and we were already so tired that we just decided to sit that one out. And I think that was wise, because the very next day or 2 days later, the next stop on the cruise was to Jordan, and we did the full day there because we went to Petra, and then we also went into Wadi Rum Desert.
Yeah, and that experience was phenomenal. Petra, I think, is probably on a lot of people's list. It's one of the 7 world wonders of the world, natural wonders or wonders, and it just was so. It was surreal, really. I mean, as you're hiking down to it, and you'd get down there, and right before you see those pictures of that kind of cut out, and then that's kind of sliver, and then you see it, and just as we were walking down there, someone started playing the theme song or the song from Indiana Jones, and I was like, seriously? Because they filmed the movie there, if you didn't already know that. So that was kind of funny, but an interesting experience. But it was a really cool experience being down there and being able to see it for ourselves and take pictures and all that kind of stuff. That was really cool. And then Wadi Rum was so cool. We got to go out to a Bedouin camp, and we had dinner there. They served dinner for us and showed us how they make the food and how they cook it under the sand all day in the heat of the sun. It was phenomenal, and the food was so great.
Yeah, we were driving around in the back of a truck from a Bedouin person, and we were just looking around, and all of a sudden we saw these camels, and Allie wanted a picture of herself with the camels, so it just worked out perfectly that they were just kind of walking in the background, and we were on the truck, and it was really cool. So quite an experience. Just kind of the kind of thing that you would never think you would get to do, but it did work out really well. And then from Jordan, the cruise went to Oman, which was a very surprising place because we didn't know anything about it. By that point, we were done making plans. Like, we were so tired that we were like, I'm not even looking this country up before we get there. What is there to do here?
I don't know what's there.
I don't even know where we're going at this point. But the cruise is stopping in Oman.
We were quickly running out of steam. Mind you, this has been over a very, a 6-month period. And as we said, this is probably why we are not doing this type of travel and why we're doing slow travels, because by this point we were actually pretty exhausted. And so we get to Oman, and we decided, you know what, we're just going to get a taxi driver, just pay someone to drive us out to the market, and then to, maybe like a mosque or something, and then bring us back to the port. We were just going to do something kind of small just to kind of get a taste of the country. It ended up being pretty cool, unexpected, and probably someplace that we would like to get back to sometime. So I would recommend Oman because it was kind of actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then where did we end
And we ended the cruise in Dubai, in the United Arab Emirates, and we did go to a couple places there. We went to
Fujairah,
yeah, Abu Dhabi,
and Abu Dhabi, and then Dubai. So we went to 3 of the 7, I think 7 Emirates, which was kind of cool because they were all a little bit different than each other. I mean, yeah, Abu Dhabi and Dubai were closer than Fujairah was, but the cool thing in Fujairah was you got to see the largest mosque in the Emirates, and then a little bit smaller version of it in Abu Dhabi, which was really cool. And then just ending in Dubai was just phenomenal. We got to have some experiences there as well that had been on our list for a long time.
Yeah, when we were very first married, we used to watch the Travel Channel. And one of the shows we saw was on Dubai. And I think we were thinking back then, this was 30 years ago almost. And we were like, if we could ever get there, go to that Burj Al Arab hotel. That was the thing. When they built that hotel, we were like, to us, for some reason, that hotel, the Burj Al Arab, was like the pinnacle of travel. It was on all these shows, and we were like, we could never do that. We could never afford that. It's never going to happen, but that would be so cool. And so we did actually go there. We weren't staying in the night because we were on the cruise, and then we had another hotel, but we went there and ate lunch at the Burj, and that was kind of a really cool roundabout life experience from 30 years previous.
Yeah, it was kind of surreal just sitting there and thinking, this is it. This is the place that we saw when they built it years ago, and now we're sitting in it eating, and here's this aquarium inside here, and it was really amazing. It was really just a really interesting experience, and that kind of culminated, really was a great finish to our 6-month 20 country challenge, because we just, we started out in some place really new and unusual to us, and just ended in a place that we had talked about and dreamed about going to for many years, and then we finally got there, and it was just really amazing. It was like, the bow on the whole challenge. And so really what we learned is what we've already said multiple times, that fast travel is for much shorter periods of time. Really, if you want to fast travel, do 3 months or less. 6 months was really too much, too long for this fast moving pace.
I think what saved us was the cruise, because you don't have to do a lot. You're not repacking your bags every day. I think had we done that last 21 days, packing and flying and repacking and checking into a new hotel every day, that would have been rough, because we were tired. But just being on the cruise, ending it with the cruise was the best thing we decided to do. And it was just amazing. But yeah, we decided not to do fast travel that quickly, because while it was amazing, it was a lot. And so now we've settled more into a slow travel. But we're also happy that we did all that when we were younger. Now this is going back 7 years, because I don't think we'd want to do a lot of the things that we did. They would just be harder, even just 7 years later. So our advice to you would be, make a list of this. This was us saying in 6 months, we're going to go do everything we ever wanted to do. And that was everything we ever wanted to do. And we did it. And then now, since then, we've come up with new lists of everything we ever wanted to do. So it doesn't end once you end the list. You just make a new list.
It's just a new list. People have a bucket list. It doesn't end.
No.
It's just like people always say, oh, so you're almost done with your bucket list. No, somehow it got longer.
Yeah. So this was our challenge. We did complete the challenge in the 6 months and made it back home. And I don't regret for a second anything we did. If you're thinking about doing something like this, just go for it.
Absolutely. Guys, you probably have questions. Leave those down in the comment section. Hope you enjoyed kind of revisiting these places with us as we were kind of chatting about them here. Consider subscribing to the channel if you enjoyed it. And if you enjoyed this video, also consider giving us a like. Guys, we hope to see you guys next time.